Okay, hello everybody. Sorry for the late start, but I guess the main host site sort of, if you guys hadn't already figured out, sort of had a little spaz from all your lovely people attending Field and Supplies. Great show, I'm sure. But here we are. I'm still ready to go. The shop is still clean, so I think we can go ahead and do this tour. So my name's Erica Moody. I'm a metal worker. I am talking to you from Waldoboro, Maine, mid-coast Maine, about an hour up the coast from Portland, Maine. And this is my entrance to my barn studio. And my house is over here. So it's a very, very tricky commute for me. I moved up here about 5 years ago from Boston, so I know urban traffic, at least Boston traffic, and this has been pretty sweet to transition to this and not have a shop space I have to pay rent on. Now I pay myself. It's nice. So let me give you a little tour in here, and bear with me. I'm not used to being a cameraman for myself, so let's see how this goes. So here we come on in. Don't trip. So here is the space. And this is a 1854 house, and this is the barn is a little bit newer post and beam barn. And I was halfway taking my apron off because I didn't think we were going to do this. Let me secure that back. So we have this is a big layout table. It's sort of where the main work happens, and then there's a bunch of machines around the perimeter. And I'm going to give you a tour around the different machines. And I also have my craft table that I would have at Field and Supplies, beautiful site there by the Hudson River, set up here with my wares out that I can give you a little close-up view of. And if anybody wants to see something up close where I can twirl it up in front of the camera so you can see it, you know, moving and all sides, I can do that. And so I'm going to keep an eye on the text chat box or the chat box every once in a while. So if you have questions, type them in there. I just might not get to them until every once in a while when I go over and check it out. And below the screen here, I think you can see the sort of basic profile and all of my pieces down below. So here we go. I'm going to give you just a quick pan of the craft table. So if you aren't familiar with my work, you can kind of see a little bit of it, and then I'll come back to it a little bit later as I get adjusted. So this is a quick, just oyster knives, and we have some tinned spoons and coffee scoops and ladle, pie servers, cake servers, wedding cake servers. Trying to see what you're seeing while we do this. Little hors d'oeuvre serving sets and some chopsticks. And get my Zoom. I have this fancy little tripod here that my dear friend Billy lent me, so I'm just trying to learn how to use it. So first I'm going to show you this milling machine that is in front of me, which you will be about to see. But it's I love old antique machines because they're reliable. They're beautiful. They have the history of our industrial age, which I think ties into some of my interest in tools and everything. But it's sort of like a glorified drill press. So the table moves left and right and front and back. And the head that has the cutter can pivot in all different directions. So you set it and lock it, and then you can move things around. So I'm going to switch. Oh my goodness, I don't know how to do it. Switch the view, which I don't know. I thought I knew how to do, but I don't. So I'm just gonna turn it around so you can see it. So this is the Bridgeport. It's this big beast of a machine. And if you can see it, because I can't see it very well, you have this cutter down here, and this head can move. So one of the things that I use this for is making these chopsticks. So these guys, which have this fussy little machine joint of aluminum side full joint there. So you have the ebony and you have the aluminum, and the aluminum gets rigged up in the vise, and then the cutter head gets moved, and then you can get this, I don't know if you can see, this nice little precision joint there. So then it mates up very well. And so that's the Bridgeport. And then there is a tool back in here. Try not to trip over each other as we come back in. So this is just a simple hydraulic press. Basically, it's a car jack, like on steroids, that you crank down like a car jack, and it puts a lot of pressure on stuff like metal. And then I make all these dies to different ways. So, for example, right now in here, there's this long, let's see, this long steel bar, and then there's a tube at the bottom, because an architect wanted a piece of furniture with a certain radius bend in it. So I was asked to figure sheet metal as a way to do that. But then on my pieces, I use it for this new series that is not released yet, but it's about to be released, is this pressed metal serving wares. So this is brass pressed metal that's then riveted to charred maple handle. So the way that that metal piece is made with that dimension is with the press. And what I do is I have a rubber pad, and I make this sort of wooden cutout. This is actually for a different style utensil. And then I take a brass sheet and I put it on top, and I put another piece of rubber down, and the amount of pressure on this press squishes it down so that when it's done getting squished, this then looks like that, and then you take it out and you have this cool piece that then you getting eaten by a mosquito right now. I am in Maine. So then cut with a little flange, then I can wrap it around the handle. So there's a whole series that I'm making out of stainless and brass that uses that technology, high-tech technology of a car jack. And so I'll give you another, let's see. So we're now walking behind here. We have a lathe. So again, this is, I want to say this is probably from the 1940s, 1950s. And this is like a drill press that turns sideways, but instead of the drill bit turning, the piece turns. So in here, this is the piece gets put in here, and the drill bit gets put in here. It's like a regular chuck, like in a cordless drill. And then the piece spins, and then you can drill a hole, or you can put these cutters in here, in this little tool rest here. If you can see it, the camera keeps spinning around. It's like a little cutter in there, so that you can cut in the side of a rotating piece, or you can drill on the end. So for example, see if this will focus, but there's this little round piece that I can put little notches in. And I don't have any current pieces with this, but I had been making candlesticks and cups and stuff by decorating little round pieces. Then there's bigger architectural pieces. I do commissions for architects and designers. So this is a newel post that had a crystal globe on it. So this is all turned by, it spins, and you cut into it with different shapes. And most recently, making these little decorative hooks for an installation artist, where I started with a brass round rod, and then I stepped down the diameter of the rod so that I could have a thread on the end, and then it goes into a washer against the wall, and it just makes a little shoulder so it stops, against the wall for a nice clean view where you don't see the screw. So let's move on here. It is Maine so it gets cold. So I have a pellet stove. So we have a nice flame in the winter to keep warm by the table. And then we have a little shear press that cuts sheet metal, thin sheet metal. I just step on the foot and it pops it. Then I have one of my favorite tools is the anvil. This is an anvil, so I do all my forgings of all the servingware handles on this. And we can come through here, and we have this old beat up sander, which I hate, but I'm about to replace. And we have all the sanding equipment. We have the sander and the buffer and different profile sanders. We have the gas torch, which that's what I use to heat up the metal to forge on the anvil there. Is I have a little torch head that I prop up on the table, and then I keep it going hot, and then I keep the metal in there and flame it, forge it, flame it, forge it, flame it, forge it. This is a welder, so I do a lot of architectural welding as well. That's my main background. And then we have, this is an enameling kiln, which I haven't got into enameling, but hopefully some new pieces will be incorporating enameling. But I bought it to actually heat treat knives because I make oyster knives. So you have to heat treat the steel in a certain way to make it hard and retain a good structure for the work that it needs to do. And boy, time flies fast. So then we have this is a swage block, which has all these great shapes that you can, you put it down on its side and you put sheet metal in it and you hammer into it to take on the shape. So there's these spoon shapes and different bowl shapes. These you can make little cones and stuff. And thank you, Chad. And then we have the saw. This is a cold saw for chopping bigger pieces, but we're going to flip around over here to the, and here is some pieces in progress. These are some copper bowls that are in the middle of getting hammered and stretched and patinaed to be more. This one's not quite done, but you can see a little bit of this peening and darker heat color, and then the brighter rim has the mirror polished, not mirror polished. I just take the burr off and then I leave the shinier part on the edge because I just thought it was interesting. This is actually, my camera wants to follow somewhere else. Here we go. This is actually a request for a measuring spoon set that I'm working on. So I'm just designing this new set where I'm going to have a shorter handle, but something similar to what I already have. But these bowls are for the ladles that are over on the finished table. So these bowls will get riveted to these handles after they're all finished. So this is a finished handle forged and shaped, and then it goes onto, gets riveted onto there with these tiny little rivets. And what do we got? We got a little bit of time, and then we have, I should check to see what questions we have before I get too far. Drill press. We have this great sander, which has a chart on it for speeds that you can use, and it includes all these different things, including hair and meteorites, which I have not yet been able to use. That's fascinating. Let me see, do we have any questions real quick before I get to other things? Let's see. Hello, Patricia, Aaron, Brad. Hello, and Quinn. Hello, Amy. This is great. How did I get into metalworking? Somebody's just asked me, which is a great question and a popular question, totally understandable question. So I have, I did a lot of 2D artwork when I was younger. I studied photography and film, fine art photography and film before digital age. And when I finished with that, I was trying to figure out what to do. And I ran into a group of folks in Boston as friends, and they all had done fine building trades, sort of the high-end building trades of building grand circular staircases and just doing incredible work on the historic homes of Boston. And I was just so intrigued by that kind of artwork, of where you're doing something that's very practical and useful. And the shops that the people had were so amazing, and that their skills crossed over into their own living spaces, where they were restoring boats and furniture. And it just was such a fascinating environment, and the machines that they had. And I was like, wow, I think I want to try to do this. And so I started looking around for someone to teach me a building trade, but I didn't know what. But I had been taking some classes on forging knives, which was pretty fascinating, just the forging blacksmith part of it, where you heat and pound metal. And a metal worker who was a sculptor, but he turned into doing a lot of more architectural metal work. His name is Pierre Trefour, out of Boston. He was looking for an assistant, and so he offered to teach me and pay me to learn. And so I thought, wow, to learn metalworking for a guy named Pierre in Boston, that sounded amazing. So I went in to do it, and I worked with him for several years, and it was pretty amazing. And then I studied blacksmithing for a little bit at some different places for a year or two, and then I started my own business doing architectural metalwork. And it's been learning a lot from the guy I learned that taught me, but also just taking on any project that came along and just trying to figure out how to do it. It's just a constant learning process when you're working with custom metalwork. So the business I started was architectural metalwork. So welding and machining and doing all of this stuff just taught me so much about the material and how it moves and how it can be worked, and the ideas. If any architects are out there, it's just the ideas that get brought to me are so out there sometimes. So just getting pushed to the limit of how to make something work when somebody is presenting you with ideas that don't necessarily know the materials themselves, and then me trying to figure out how to make that happen in the material, where I have the tooling, the machining, and a little bit of the knowledge, has been probably most of my learning experience, is just trying to get those things to work, and being challenged from some, outside of myself to create a project. And then I've been running this business for 20 years. So that's a little bit just of my metalwork. And let's see, do you have a favorite piece you like to make, coming from Brad? I love all of it. I don't, favorite piece, I think, I don't know if there's a favorite piece, because I think every aspect and every part of making all of these pieces is so interesting to me. So I love when I get to turn on the torch and forge, but I love, the very beginning part, which can be really daunting, because it seems like it's never going to work, even though I'd made, a few ladles before. When I go to make them again, I'm like, oh, it's never going to work, and then it does. But I think the favorite part of metalworking, maybe not a piece, but the part of the process that is most exciting to me, is when I'm designing. I don't do a lot of preliminary work in the designing. I come in and I sort of dive in blindly, and I kind of try to come up with something, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I kind of have some idea, but usually something ends up happening. There's a shift where it starts to reveal itself that's completely different than what I expected it to be. That is the magic right there that I love, because it's just so bizarre. Like the pie server, the pie server is a fun example where I went into the shop one night before a friend's birthday, and she likes to make pie, and I'd been wanting to make a pie server, and I thought, okay, let's just go in there and make a pie server. I had no idea what I was going to do. And there's a few antique tools that I have in my kitchen, cooking tools, and I pull them out and I look and I start to make. And it didn't take very long for that thing to come out, and I was so excited. And some of it was kind of planned and some wasn't, and then some were mistakes that I actually really loved, that initially when they happened I was like, no, and then I was like, whoa, yes. So I mean, and then that thing has been one of the most loved and pieces, and it hasn't changed since that first night of designing it, which and it works really well, and people say they love how it works. So that's been that's kind of that fun moment when it kind of turns a corner. Let's see. Show us how you do your hammering. Ooh. I could try to do that. I don't know how much time we have for that, but I know, Chad, we talked about maybe doing this again at 3:30, 3:15 tomorrow. Is that still a thing? I'm not sure that I could maybe do that. Hunter, hello, Hunter. What's your favorite piece you like making the most? Is another question. Same thing. Well, I guess I kind of answered that one. Spoons, though, I mean, you probably tell from the products I have. Let's see. Yes, wishing there was more time. I agree. Oh, and my phone does. Yes, you can come back tomorrow at 3:15, and I can do more of a hands-on thing. So Chad was just giving the thumbs up for that, so that's great. Let's see. Yes, somebody else asked me if I can make something, so I'll plan that tomorrow at 3:15 on Saturday. Anything new? I can. My screen kind of. Am I still? Where is my screen? Let's see. The chat came up and I don't see me anymore. So you can still see me, Chad? I just can't. Let's see. The chat window came up and now I can't see me. Do you know how to get out of that, Chad? I can't see filming, unfortunately. There we go. I got it. I think I got it. No. I found out how to turn my camera around, though. Well, I can kind of smaller screen, but I think I can see enough here. So new things. So I'm just about to release some. There's the pressed metal stuff, which there's some pieces actually over here. Don't tell anybody. They're so brand new. So there's these. This is a stainless version of a pressed metal piece where the stainless is to press it to get enough volume. It needs to be thinner. So I've designed this piece where I'm layering extra stainless on the handle. I don't know if you can see this okay, to strengthen it, but I also love the duality, the color and the color difference. So this is burnished stainless and then blackened stainless that's pinned with brass rivets. So this is a brand new line that I'm working on here with different shapes. So this is another shape that doesn't have the layers on it yet. And then another new line is same deal with that layered sandwich piece thing, is this cheese set. So actually, in the times I've done the field and supply the last few years, there's been a lot of requests for cheese knives. So I finally, I don't know if any of you guys are watching that requested it at the last shows, is some cheese knives. So this is a brand new unreleased cheese set with the layered things. So we have the little different style cheeses, and they have that sandwich piece. These are the prototypes in production quite yet. So the sandwich both sides of the black and stainless and the bright stainless coming, and I'm working on a little felt pouch that they're going to go into as an option. So that is some new work. And what other questions we have? Yes, again, 3:15 Saturday, I will be making stuff. There's another request for that. Where do I get my inspiration? How are we doing on time? What are we doing, Chad? Do I keep going or do I stop? We're doing okay. He says, okay, keep going. Inspirations of my pieces. So, antiques, you know, I'm an antique fan. So a lot of my career, I'm squatting here because I can't try to follow the camera. Yeah, a lot of the metalwork experience that I have is for architects working on very modern, minimal, slick designs. And so a lot of my my experience is in making that happen. But if you were to go into my house, I don't have any of that. It's all antique stuff or heirloom things handed down from my wonderful family, or antiques that I've found because I love the history behind it and the people that have maybe used it and the story that comes with it, and including the time that I actually go to buy the thing, is usually fascinating, like going to a market like Field and Supply, like the handmade stuff or the antique things. It's so exciting to think, oh, I remember that time I was at that Field and Supply show that was amazing, and I saw this person, and I ate this thing, and I bought that thing. It sort of locks into that experience when you see that piece from then on. And so antiques have a lot for me for that, and now, you know, handmade crafts as well. So usually when I go to find a new, like those cheese sets, for example, or many of the things, if I'm like, all right, I want to do a cheese set, I'll Google antique cheese knife. And I just look at what happens and what comes up. And then my brain starts spinning and I start to think about materials and what's possible and what do I know. And, you know, and then also with production to try to make sure that I can get it, keep it in a certain price point. So I think that the antiques are a huge inspiration, as well as just knowing the material, and knowing what it can do, and thinking about ways to manipulate the metal. And then once I play around with that, then I say, okay, well, how can that technique turn into something that can be a tool? And I'm just happen to be focusing on food tools or eating tools because I love to eat and I love food. So I guess that's the answer for the inspiration, or at least part of it. Still keep going. So it's 6:07. So 6:07. You want to go till 6:15, and then I'm gonna need to eat something. Speaking of food. So, okay, so good, I got a thumbs up. So, yeah, so Becky, hi, you're asking about a new skill you're actively trying to learn. The pressed brass has been a fairly new thing that I've been trying to play around with. I don't know how much I can push it, so it's just starting to learn how to work with that to really bring out the possibilities of dimension. If you saw earlier, layering up high spots and then cutting holes in the form so that the metal has to get pushed around and sink in to get more dimension and more volume. So trying to learn a little bit more about what's possible with that. Also, heat treating. So I've taken knife classes here and there, and I've played around a little bit with it here and there, but I know a very basic, straightforward, way of doing it with tools that I teach in workshops, as well as the oyster knives that I do. Another new piece that hasn't had the prototype made yet are steak knives, which I'm very excited about. I have a design ready to go, and I've wanted my own steak knives because I don't like the ones I have, and I've just had a hard time finding ones that I like. So I thought, why not? I'd try to make one. Although I usually don't own my own pieces because you guys get them. But the steak knife, I don't know how much I'm going to be learning from it. I mean, the heat tempering on knives is so different from the type of knife that you need to make. So an oyster knife needs to be strong, but a little flexible so you can get in there without it breaking. But a chef knife needs to be really rigid and strong and not as flexible. But you don't want it to chip and break. So there's different ways to heat treat the different kinds of knives. So it'd be interesting to learn more about that. And also learning how to integrate more materials together. So I've always wanted to learn more with, like, if you know Carl Auerbach, is that right? Carl Auerbach, great historic designer, does a lot of shrinking leather around metal, around brass, which is just so beautiful. So I would really love to play around with how to do that. So you have like a leather wrapped handle over the metal utensil, or, you know, working with the potter or ceramic person, a ceramic person, ceramicist to work with. Maybe I started playing around a little bit with porcelain and brass, or porcelain and steel, and how to make those go together, or a glass artist. So I think working with different materials come together, whether it's collaborating with an artist in that field or playing around myself, I think would be fascinating to explore. People like the cheese knives. That's good. Good. Thank you. So I'm excited. I'm hoping those should be ready by the fall. If not beforehand, but maybe I'll consider taking pre-orders. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, Carl Auerbach is pretty good. I get the thumbs up for some people there. Yeah, and I think I can just end it out because we just have a few more minutes. I'll just give a quick close-up of some of the pieces, unless anybody else has any other questions about stuff that you want to ask. I'll check in right before we sign out. But here, let me come here and aim you down. Whoa, that's too far down. So oyster knives, I'm hoping this is going to be good light. See if you can see the window I can see is so tiny. So these are the oyster knives. Is it in focus, Chad, you think? Is it focusing all right? There's a delay on the sound, so I'm not sure. Yeah, he says good. So I cut out the okay, it's a weird feedback now. So the blades, I cut out the profile, and then I forge this to be thinner, and then I sand it all, and I also sand the tail end to be thinner, so that you have a thick, you know, the original 1/8 inch, and then it goes thin towards the back, gets thinner up to the front, so you have a better balance on the piece. It's not as chunky, but I want enough to hold on this, and so many of the oyster knives out there are so symmetrical, so I wanted to do something that was not symmetrical, and also just it just feels well in your hand, feels good in your hand. So this one, you have like enough of a surface area for the different ways that you might want to hold something, and also left or right-handed, that you can really grab this and have enough force to feel. And I've had a lot of caterers. My phone might determine how long we talk. I had a lot of caterers use this for long shuckings, and they love it. So these are fun. These are actually pretty fun to make because they look crazy and out there, and then as they get shaped, I guess everything does. So so beautiful. This is the ladle. The pieces are over there on the work table. Right, so you have the forged copper. I start with a spun bowl, and then I forge it to stretch it out a little bit bigger, and then and then when you're heating it to do that, it softens. So copper and brass, the only way to get it hard again is you work it. So and for it to keep its nice rigidity in here, I peen it to strengthen that again. So those peen marks are not just pretty, but they came about because of the necessity to make this strong again on the edge. And I don't peen the whole thing because you don't really need to do that for the strength. So I'm only peening that top part. And then again, that shiny part on the edge is because there's a burr at the top. After I sand, after peening it, there's little bumps and sharp edges there. See that mosquito just bite me? It wanted to get on camera. So then I Scotch-Brite this. I polished this to get the burr off, but I kind of like leaving that brightness and not darkening it again. And then this stainless blade is sanded, so I sculpt the thin to thick to thin, all with an angle grinder, because that's my tool that I know so well from my industrial metal background. But then I forge the end to get it to shape around this bowl nice and tightly. So I heat it and forge it, and that's where the darker color comes towards the end. And then rivets to attach it together, and just a lot of burnishing. And I'm going to check real quick on the question. Nope, no more questions. So get another mosquito. So I think we're almost about to wrap up. So this is the stainless steel version of the pie server that I talked about earlier, and then the brass one. These are forged steel that are seasoned like a cast iron pan with oil on the steel part. And then the brass is burnished. And then you have these little salt spoons. Forged stainless, those are heated and dapped in that swaging block I showed earlier. Maybe we can make one of these on Saturday. And yeah, one more thing and then we'll go. But this is the little small little ladle that I tin the bowls, so it's aesthetically cool, just going from brass to silver. And on the back, they all are different erratic tinning, but the front is smooth. But it also, yeah, it's just a nice little detail. But I think that is basically, if I can get the camera up, it for today. Sorry about the slow start, but I hope that was fun for you guys to watch. And tomorrow, Saturday at 3:15, I will plan on making something. I'm not sure yet what, but sounds like hammering and fire and all that stuff could be fun to watch. So if you're around, come back then. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm also going to be having a video chat hours tomorrow morning, 10 to 12, and Sunday, 10 to 12. All right. Bye. Enjoy looking around the Field and Supply site. It's so wonderful. They're doing an amazing job with this virtual switcheroo. So thank you, Brad. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, everybody. Take care.